Hello, and in this video we're going to continue to talk about staves and clefs, which lay the foundation to musical notation. In the last video we discussed two primary clefs, the first being a treble clef, and the second being a bass clef. So in terms of writing, consider a staff. So a treble clef starts as a solid dot note at the bottom, works its way up, and loops around this first line. It loops around here, which we define as a G. Therefore, some people sometimes refer to this treble clef as a G clef. For bass clef, consider a staff, 5 lines, 4 spaces, closed circle, first line on the top, loops down, 2 dots. So the note for which this solid line lies is what we call an F. With that being said, sometimes people refer to this as an F clef. Sometimes people refer to these two, when you put them together, as what we call a grand staff. So grand staff considers 2 staves separated by this line in the middle, so treble clef up top, bass clef on bottom. So 3 notes of importance here. This note here is a G, this note here is an F, and this note here is a C. So in this video we're going to talk about all the other letters in the note sequence. So we denote musical notes with the letters A through G. Once over, we repeat. There is a reason that we end at G and we do not go to, for example, H, I, or J, but we'll discuss these in a more advanced video later. So let us consider the treble clef. So by definition, this note here represents a G. If that is a G, then if we go up, well, there's no letter after G, so that means this note by definition must be an A. This note here must be a B. This note here must be a C. This note here must be a D, and so on. You can also go down in the downwards direction. So again, this by definition is a G. So if we go down one note, so for example this line, this would be an F, this would be an E, this will be a D, and you may note that this is C, or the middle C that we usually refer to as. Well, now let us go down to the bass clef area. So again, bass clef starts up here. By definition, this is going to be an F. So if we go down, this would be an E. This would be a D. This would be a C. This would be a B, and so on. We can also go in the upwards direction. So therefore, this would be a, well, one note above an F would be a G. Then it would repeat, so this would be an A. This would be a B. And here, one line above would be C, which is the middle C. So note that this note and this note correspond to the same exact thing. So the extra lines above or below a staff are called ledger lines. Now, most people do not like writing ledger lines. For example, suppose I have a bass clef here, and I want to figure out, okay, what is this note here? Well, I would have to pretty much count starting from this letter here, right? So this would be an F, that would be a G, that would be an A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. So that must be a B. But if you're reading music very fast, sometimes this is not very efficient or quick nonetheless. So this is why we have these two different clefs. So recall that the treble clef is above the bass clef, so it might be more useful to represent this B on the treble clef. So again, remember that this line F is located where? Well, C is going to be here, D is underneath that, no, B is underneath that, then A, then G, then F. So that means, what is this? Well, this is going to be a B, this is going to be an A, this is going to be a G, and this right here is the F that the bass clef is pretty much circled around. So if we go above a few lines, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines, we get where? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. And that, of course, is a B. Now, is it quicker to figure out that this is a B based in treble or B based on bass? Well, of course, this is an easy answer, because this, by definition, is a G. If that is a G, then that right there is an A, which means that right there is a B. So if we have extra lines, that's usually when we would switch into another clef if possible. So therefore, different clefs are sometimes used to avoid writing too many ledger lines. Now, sometimes you can't get around this. For example, consider a treble clef, given as so. It's not too neat, is it? So, treble clef. Now, suppose I have this note here, and I ask, okay, what is this equal to? So, well, bass clef is going to be down here, so the bass clef isn't really going to help us, right? So therefore, we have to pretty much start here at G. So if that is G, then what is the next in sequence? So, well, that's going to be A, that's going to be B, that's going to be C. That's going to be D, E, F, and G. So sometimes it's useful to remember different letters of G on a particular staff. So this is going to be G, and this is going to be a higher pitch G as well. So if that is G, well, this G can easily count up because it's a little bit more closer. So this is going to be A. Above it is going to be B. Then it's going to be C. Then it's going to be what? D. And then E is going to be the next ledger line. So this line corresponding to here would be an E. So therefore, if one is pretty much working with both bass and treble clef, it's sometimes useful to memorize or be comfortable with being able to switch or identify different values of G or some other letter you may be more acquainted with. So for example, let us assume I'm in the treble clef and I want to identify G's, as many of them as I can. So by definition, this is the, I guess you could call it a middle G, and this is going to be the next G above, And if I go below, then we've already discussed that this is going to be the next G below. So if I want to go in the bass clef, for example, so where's all my G's going to be? Well, if this is going to be F, then right above is going to be a G. And if I count all the way down, then I'll be able to find that that is equal to a G. And if I keep going down, then I'll be able to find that this is equal to a G. Notice that there is a relationship between these two staves. For example, notice if this is a G, notice the relationship between treble clef and bass clef is one shifted down. So if this is a G, if I want to go to a G in the bass clef, then I'm going to shift one line down and I'm going to get here. So if this is a G on the treble clef, namely right below the second ledger line on the bottom, then if I shift down one more, then that's going to be below the third ledger line on the bottom. And you can use this to switch in between the two if you're more comfortable with bass over the treble or more comfortable with treble over the bass. So as an example, suppose I have the following picture. And I say that, okay, what is this letter here? And I'm going to be like, okay, that's a D. So where are all my D's located for this treble? Well, if that's a D, then I can find out that this is going to be a D as well. I can also find that, well, since that's a C, then that's going to be a D as well. So if I want to sort of transpose this and ask where the D's at on the bass clef, then I would just transpose all those notes down one ledger line. So therefore, my highest D would be here, my next D would be here, and my next D would be here. So these are all the D's on the bass clef. Now, not necessarily the same ones, of course, because as you know, the treble is above the bass clef. So this D here and this D here are equal, but these two are going to be above and these two are going to be below. So if I map all of them on the same exact grand staff, so this is going to be my treble, this is going to be my bass system. So where are all the, I don't know, let's do E's for example. So my E is going to be here. My next E is going to be here, and if I go up 3 ledger lines, that's going to be an E as well. So if I want to sort of transpose downwards, so where is this E going to be transposed down to? Well, that's going to be 2 ledger lines above the bass clef. So that's going to be 1, 2. But of course, those two are going to be equal, but I'm going to transpose the next one down. So this note is going to go where? It's going to go on the second line. And this line is on the bottom line of the treble, so the next E would be on the first ledger line of the bottom. So these are all the E's for both treble and bass. And you can extend even above this one or below this one. But most of the time, it does not go above or below unless it's a really high-pitched or a low-pitched sound that's trying to be achieved.